Morning, everybody. Nice to see you as always. Thank you for making the time to be with us. Hopefully it won't be too long tonight. We ended the last town hall with really my pre-Thanksgiving thanks and thankfulness. And I want to just start this one briefly with my post-Thanksgiving thanks. Thank you to everyone here for your care and communal concern over Thanksgiving. Thus far, our communal tests, as you know, our results show that the care has kept us safe. We know that that comes at a cost. We're all giving up a lot of things that under normal circumstances enrich our lives. And I really tonight know that all the parents on this call will join me in giving special thanks to our faculty and staff, many of whom changed their plans or did not make plans they would have made otherwise, even within the constraints of COVID, to make sure that we could reopen for in-person learning last Monday. We did, and we really need to thank our faculty and staff each and every day, and I know you join me tonight in thanking them as we have been able to return for Thanksgiving. So really, to every member, to all of my colleagues on this call, thank you. And to all the parents on this call, thank you for everything you did to help us keep our school safe and everything you continue to do. Speaking of people who we should thank each and every day, please chat your questions to David Hess, our indomitable board chair, my partner in crime, and he will keep them and as usual, ask them at the end. Okay, 3 things on the agenda for tonight. First, a few preliminary reflections on the surveys that we sent out last week. Second, a mental health report from my colleague, Dr. Bonnie Altman. And third, an update on our plans for future COVID testing next week after winter break and beyond. Hopefully not too far beyond, but that's the agenda. So first up, thank you to everyone I'm looking at who completed the surveys that we sent out last week. Parent survey, faculty and staff survey. We are still processing all of the results, but let me say your feedback is tremendously helpful, especially as we look ahead to after break and hang in there into the spring. I'm going to report more down the line about how we're incorporating different suggestions and comments as we plan for the second semester. But for now, I just want to highlight 3 things that we're really hearing loud and clear and taking seriously. So first thing from our parents and actually from our students, we did a high school student survey last week also. We hear loud and clear the value you place on in-person learning and on time for our students in our buildings. And as you obviously have figured out, we agree. We know you want more of it and more variations on it in terms of academic time, social time, sports, and more. And we truly, truly hope to be able to do that as the year progresses. We're working on it. We're committed to it. We all hope for more school, more sports, more activities, and more socializing as the year progresses. And hopefully not only will our plans make that possible, but the city and areas around us will make that possible in the upcoming months. So that's the first thing we heard loud and clear from our parent surveys across our divisions. Second thing we heard is from our faculty and staff. Hybrid teaching remains super, super challenging. In particular, and I know I've said this before, but if you're not walking into our classrooms, which sadly, I know all the parents on this call are not. If you're not walking into our classrooms, it is very difficult to describe how challenging it is to teach both a classroom of students and a screen of students at the same time. So I really have to stress what I've said before. A remote option is for when students are fully remote, or they're sick, they're flagged for the symptom screen, or they're quarantined. It's really not for travel or for convenience. To the parents who are here tonight, we totally understand how complicated things are. We really do. And please understand that we really need to support our teachers and our learning. And that means we cannot simply use the remote platform anytime someone is out of school. Okay, so that's the second thing we heard from our faculty and staff. The third thing we really heard from everyone, and that is quarantine is hard. We've had a bunch of our community members in quarantine now. It's challenging in different ways for different people, and it's hard. We know that. We're learning as we go. We're going to continue to try to support everyone through this inevitable piece of this crazy year. Please always let us know if we could be doing something differently or more effectively as we really try to support people through this. For you, for our students, we're going to keep learning and keep trying. So those are the sort of three things I wanted to flag initially that we really took away loud and clear from our surveys. As I said, there are a lot more details. We appreciate that you took the time to share them. We're going to tackle the suggestions small and large, and I will continue to report back. Second topic of the night. Our health concerns this year include not only our physical health and safety, but also our mental health. I don't need to tell you, this year is hard. I think that our school, you know, I think that being in school every day, alongside the amazing news about the vaccines, really gives us all tremendous hope that there's light at the end of this tunnel. I don't know how many of you listened this morning to the interview with Margaret Keenan, the 90-year-old British woman who received the world's first COVID vaccine. I wept listening to her speak about what it meant to her. It filled me with hope, not the least because it turns out the second person to get the vaccine was actually named William Shakespeare. I don't know how many of you are reading the vaccine news as closely as I am, but there is tremendous hope in all this news. And it's December. It's dark and it's cold. And we all spend some time of our day consuming the news about the hard winter that's ahead. We're all in a hard stretch, all of us. And I think it's important just to acknowledge that, and the challenges that come are going to come as we get to the light that is now clearly at the end of the tunnel. So in that spirit, I've asked Dr. Bonnie Altman, our school psychologist and director of student services, to share some thoughts with us tonight about mental health and mental health resources. And it is my huge pleasure to turn this over for the next few minutes to Bonnie.
Hi, everyone. Everyone hear me? Yes? Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of talk, obviously, about the physical health of everybody this year, but I wanted to spend a little time tonight just to acknowledge the mental health needs of our community. I speak for the whole mental health team when I say we're working hard to support students, and we have been so impressed with their resilience and their ability to adapt. You see this from the youngest children who walk into school, they take their temperatures, they swipe their cards, and they walk on fully adapted and fully ready for their school day. We're learning from those kids. We're learning from all of them. If you see drop off outside, you'll see it's smooth, it's seamless. It's as if this is very normal. And it tells us a lot about the human spirit. And being in the building feels great. With all the health protocols that are in place, it's not so obvious that in-person learning would have been as successful and even joyful as it is. Across divisions, students seem to take pleasure from in-person learning, which shows us the power of connection, of being together, and of community, and just how meaningful all of it really is. And as Ariella said, we're going into a long winter, and not everything is so easy. Zoom is still really hard. On our end, we have put in more breaks. We have played around with the schedules. We have breakout rooms and asynchronous learning. Our teachers are fantastic and they're creative and they're thinking about all of it. And Zoom is hard. It's not only the eye strain and the posture issues, and it's all of that, but it's also, imagine being a teenager or a pre-teenager staring at yourself all day long in the height of psychological self-consciousness. It's not ideal. Zoom, however, has ways of dealing with this I've recently learned, but still, Zoom is hard. We know that. As Ariella said, quarantining is hard. It's less hard when your whole cohort is out and you're all out together. But when you're the one that's home and you're learning remotely, it's not easy. We're paying attention to what students find challenging so that we know how and when we can reach out. We're also focused on the lack of socialization because we know it's important to children. They're craving ways to interact and in ways that are fun and they want to connect. And we're looking for ways that are safe and fulfilling for them. But we're concerned about their mental health. We have students who are struggling, and we're thinking about everyone, students, faculty, and parents. And as Ariella said, January through March is always a kind of dark time in a school year. It's the hardest part of every school year. But the advantage and the gift of working in a school is that you really come to appreciate the cycle of a school year and the cycle of the seasons. So it's predictable. It's predictable that we know that it's dark and cold right now. And just when we've had enough, we come to the other side with the sun shining and hopefully a vaccine. Mostly, I just want you all to know that the mental health team is here. They're all here tonight, this evening on this call, but they are here in general. We have Janet Andron Hoffman in our early childhood and Benti Rabinovich in our early childhood and lower school. Danielle Landau is a psychologist in the lower school, and Emily Arnstein is a psychologist in the middle school. Please, please reach out to all of us if you have any concerns at all. We have already spoken with so many students and families. We have made referrals when we've had to. We are paying attention to the mental health needs, but we really rely on your partnership and communication always, and especially for all the things that we can't see. So thank you. That's really it.
Thank you, Bonnie. I can't tell you how much I rely on the entire mental health team. And I really encourage everyone here, faculty, staff, parents, I know there's some students, reach out. It can only be a good thing, and it's really a tremendously, tremendously gifted group of people. We are lucky to have them. So thank you to all of my mental health colleagues. Okay, last topic for tonight, and then we're going to take your questions. Testing next week and beyond. Okay, so as you know, we are in the final stretch of our post-Thanksgiving testing. We have done our testing in sort of 3 batches. 2 out of 3 of those batches, the results are back. We collected that last batch today, predominantly from the middle school, and I will share the results as soon as I have them. As you also know, thankfully, our communal positivity rate thus far is really extremely low. And as I said at the outset, that's because of all of you. That's because of this remarkable community. And special thanks are due, as always, to Rachel and Bertie Bregman at Westside Family Medicine. These rounds of testing require meticulous planning and care, and we are tremendously, tremendously lucky for this partnership. So let me tell you what to expect coming up. So first, what's going to happen coming up is next week, we're going to test our community again, this time using, as I mentioned at the last town hall, a different testing system, a pool testing system. I'm going to pause for a minute, and I'm going to ask Dr. Lori Zabar to explain how pool testing works from a medical science perspective. And then I'm going to I'm going to show you what it looks like practically at Heschel. So let me give it to Lori for a minute, and then I'll tell you how this is all going to work at our end. Lori.
Yeah, hi everybody. Pool testing is a really convenient, efficient way of screening a large group of people at one time for a particular infection. So we've been looking into this for quite some time, nearly since the beginning of school, and hoping we could line something like this up. We're really excited to be able to roll it out. And essentially, what's done at home, and Ariella will go over the details of this, but is very similar to what we've all been doing already. So it's a saliva sample that you provide at home and send back to school the next day. What happens on the lab end is that those samples get pooled into groups of 24. So we can determine that it's like, 2 particular pods. We can identify which ones we want to pool together to make it easiest for us. They run the test on the whole pool. If it's negative, all 24 of those individuals are negative. So it's a quick and efficient way to get those answers. If the whole pool of 24 comes up positive, it gets narrowed down in the lab into groups of 2, eventually to find where the positive is, at which point, with the doctor's order, which we will provide, they can identify which individual sample tested positive within the pool of 24. At that point, that individual will be notified and asked to get a confirmatory PCR test for diagnostic purposes to confirm that that individual is actually positive. So it all can happen very quickly to get through a whole population of the school, especially in light of the fact that our rates of infection have been so low within the community that most of those pools of 24 are just going to get run through as negative very quickly, provided our numbers stay where they are now. It's a really efficient way of doing things. So we're excited about it, and we'll roll it out next week, and then on an ongoing basis, sort of adding to our strategy of masking, distancing, cohorting, hand washing, all of those good things that together have kept our schools so safe. We're adding to that regular testing now that we have this option available.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, can you hear me now? Bonnie, can you give me a thumbs up if you hear me? Awesome. Okay, thank you, Lori. And Lori, we'll take all your questions after. Lori's here, Rhonda's here. Anything you're wondering about, we're happy to try to answer. I just want to tell you how this is going to work practically, and also say a little bit more about break. And I should say at the outset, for anyone who's wondering, Heschel is funding this testing. There is no cost to you or to your insurance. This is a moment for Hakarat Hatov, for recognizing the really, for extending thanks to our Board of Trustees, to our advisory committee, to Alan Sheffin, our brilliant CFO and budgeter, for really recognizing that along with the other safety measures, testing will help keep us safe and open. And so we're going to try to do this weekly going forward. So from a practical perspective, and you don't need to take notes on any of this, we will put it all in writing for you. Next week, we're going to distribute and collect the tests the same way we've been doing on the individual saliva PCR tests. We'll begin next week with middle school. We'll send home the tests on Monday. You'll bring them back Tuesday morning. Then for early childhood and lower school, we'll send home the tests on Tuesday. You'll bring them back Wednesday. For high school, we'll send home the tests on Wednesday. You'll bring them back Thursday. Staff who's on this call, who's not affiliated with a division, we will work that out as always. As Lori said, the process is going to be very similar, and you will get full instructions sent to you. Instead of the big vial, you're going to get a little vial, and you're going to get this little straw type feature. You're going to take out the straw. You're going to uncap the vial. You're going to use the straw to fill the vial with saliva. You're going to have gotten this handy dandy alcohol wipe. You're going to wipe the whole thing off. You're going to put it back in your bag. You're going to drop it off. It is no easier or more difficult than the last one. The thing to note is that your little vial is going to have a barcode, not a name. We scan it in at this end when it goes out. We scan it back in at this end when it comes back. It's extremely important that you use the vial you're given. And if you lose the vial, we will handle it back here as we need to. That's how it's going to work. You're going to get an email from Magnus prompting you to consent to the testing. Please fill it out when you receive it. And that's our plan for next week. And we should have those results before winter break, so that we will have effectively done 2 rounds of testing between Thanksgiving and winter break, which brings us to winter break. Winter break, as you know, starts on Wednesday, December 23rd. As you also know, school resumes on Monday, January 4th, and school will be remote for 2 weeks until we resume in person on Tuesday, January 19th. I should note that originally, for those of you who are good on the Heschel calendar, you will know that January 19th was supposed to be a professional development day. It is not going to be a professional development day. We're going to have professional development days for the divisions in February, and we will get those dates out to you as soon as possible. But the basic parameters is that break begins on December 23rd. Learning resumes on January 4th. In-person learning resumes on January 19th. We are going remote to maximize our safety so that everyone can get tested before returning to school. And so that if people are traveling to see people you don't normally see, or you're seeing people you don't normally see and you're staying put, it is going to give you time to come back, go back into your household or pod, quarantine if you need to, and get tested before we're back in person. If you are traveling, please remember that Heschel requires 14 days of quarantine before returning to school. And obviously you also need to follow New York's rules in terms of testing. We're gonna have a question on the symptom screen before anyone comes back to make sure that you're complying with our safety standards. So we will need to receive a negative COVID test result from every member of our in-person community by Monday, January 18th. You can do that test anytime the week of January 11th. You can, as always, test anywhere you like. And we're going to be offering an on-site clinic, an on-site nasal swab clinic at Heschel through Westside Family Medicine, who again get my huge thanks, on Wednesday, January 13th. So if the easiest thing for you is just to come here by appointment and get tested here on January 13th, we hope this will make it easier for you to do that. We'll be sending out a form so that you can indicate if you want to test on site, and we can make sure we have enough slots to do that. And then our hope is that once we return, we will resume our weekly pool testing for as long as we need to do that. And obviously, our true hope is that that's not going to be for that long. Finally, our next town hall will not be 2 weeks from tonight as originally scheduled, which is the first night of vacation. I'm sure you all would rather be someplace else. It will be early in January, and I will send dates out shortly. And of course, if you have questions before that, you know where to find me. We are always happy to answer them. We're going to turn to questions as soon as I remind you to join us on Thursday night to light the menorah as we fight the corona. This is from the folks who brought you Lag Bazoomer. Special thank you to David Steinberg and the entire Menorah Corona, if you can say that 100 times fast, the entire Menorah Corona team. Look out for a special purple bag if you're a parent on this call coming home with a dreidel for one of the events. Yeah, please plan to join us for that. And with that, I will turn it over to David for any and all of your questions. And thank you again.
All right, thank you all. Ariella, let's start at the end and work our way backwards. Just say or repeat, please, the post-holiday quarantine requirements and how contiguous states to New York fit or don't fit into the quarantine requirements.
If you are traveling,
meaning if you're spending,
if you're in New York or you're in a state that's contiguous to New York, you're easy, off the hook, doesn't require any quarantine, and you also are not covered by New York's testing rules. If you're traveling anywhere that is not New York State or the contiguous states, then we ask you to quarantine for 14 days before coming back to school. That is built into our schedule. And New York State has a set of rules about testing before and after you come back. You can look those up right on the New York State website.
Okay, perfect. And we should just, Ariella, I think you're going to do this anyway, but make sure that everybody has Westside Family's hours of operation and availability. Yep. So people can make that easy.
We will send it all out. Everything I just said, you will get in a written communication later this week, including the instructions for the new pool testing system.
Okay, and just to pick up on that, there's a couple of questions around pool testing. So let me just reiterate, and Lori and Ariella, you can correct where I go awry here. Look, our view is that if we could be testing every hour, that would be ideal. If we could test every day, that would be great. And in the absence of those two things, testing every week is going to be our focus. Pool testing is simply a different technology to hopefully replicate in a slightly more efficient way, both from a cost perspective and from a time perspective, what we've already been doing. It is plus or minus the same amount of saliva that's required. There's no additional spitting that's required once that first deposit is made, and everything happens behind the scenes. So we hope you will find this to be, again, additive from a safety perspective and easier from an efficiency perspective. Did I get that okay? Okay.
Yes.
Great. All right, so let's go back to some of the more mundane. Ariella, anything, and I'm sure the polls would say this question splits 50-50. Anything we're thinking about in terms of changes to cohorting in the second half of the year?
So I would say for what it's worth, we got more responses asking us to keep the cohorts intact than change them. But actually, this is primarily an educational decision, not anything else. The cohorts will more or less remain intact at this time. As I said, we are hopeful that the spring is going to bring lots of possibilities for lots of different things. But for the immediate post-break period, at least, in the main, cohorts are going to stay the same.
Great, thanks, Ariella. Lori, just back to the quarantining question for a moment. Folks are picking up that there's a little bit of a difference of policy from the CDC relative to what we're doing and what the DOH and or DOE is currently advising or requiring. Maybe it's worth at least just recognizing what that difference is. And I think unless and until that those differences get ironed out, we're going to stick with what we've got.
Sure. I mean, there's quarantining for close contact potential exposure, and there's quarantining for travel. So those are two different things. From our perspective at Heschel, the quarantine is the same. It's 14 days for either an exposure or for travel outside of the contiguous states. Where there's some movement and change happening is in the New York State rules for quarantine regarding travel. So people who travel outside the contiguous states before returning if they have a test 72 hours before they return, and then another test 4 days after return, and both of those are negative, that can end the quarantine after travel, according to New York State. That is not something we've adopted at this point for Heschel. And then for close contacts, as some of you may have seen, the CDC just put forth new guidelines with ways to, with testing, make the quarantine period shorter. Testing at 7 days to shorten the duration of quarantine after a potential close contact. That has not been adopted by New York State yet or New York City. So the Department of Health and Heschel still follow the guideline of 14-day quarantine after an exposure.
Okay, great.
Did
Thanks,
that answer
Lori.
the question?
Yeah,
okay.
Perfect. And just to, there's another series of questions just to reiterate what we said about the post-holiday period. So I'll give it a try. If you are not in New York State or one of the contiguous states during the holiday period, we're expecting 14 days in New York State or in a contiguous state prior to starting back live school.
And you have 14 days between when we start school and when we start school in person, and that was designed to allow for just that. So basically, when school starts, you should be back in New York or
New Jersey.
Yeah, or the contiguous state of your choice.
Lori, maybe because everyone's interested in the public health piece of this, what are you among the professionals hearing in terms of vaccine progress, in terms of timetable? And there's questions here, Ariella, about are we going to require vaccines and when? I'll let you field that one.
So the vaccine news is very exciting. On the medical side, we expect FDA authorization of it any moment. And as soon as that happens, medical centers have their orders placed and are ready to go, ready to activate, ready to start vaccinating healthcare workers and essential workers. And, there's sort of a very interesting discussion to be had about how to prioritize who gets vaccinated when. I'll vote for teachers right here. You have it on the record. So I think there's a lot of excitement about that. The distribution, the logistics of it are going to just take a lot of time. So realistically, for when widespread vaccination will be available, I think we're thinking more along in terms of the spring, not so much before then, but it will start being rolled out very, very soon, we expect. And just from the healthcare perspective, partly due to resources, partly due to legal reasons, even within the hospitals, they have not yet mandated this as a requirement. So I leave it to Heschel to answer what that decision will be, but just where it stands on the medical side, they haven't even kind of crossed that threshold of making it something that's mandatory yet.
We look forward to the day when we stop spitting in vials and get to decide whether the vaccine is mandatory, and you'll all be the first 700 people to know.
Ariella, could you just talk for a moment about what happened with the lunch program, and in particular, if such a thing happens again, is there a backup plan we can think about?
So what happened with the lunch program is that somebody in the kitchen tested positive, and thankfully that person is doing fine, which is the most important thing to us. At the moment, we don't have a backup team for the lunch program. The lunch program is unbelievably complicated to run. I think everyone who works at Heschel who's on this call can back me up here. If you're a parent, you'll have to take my word for it. It is unbelievable to me that this works every day. It is truly a tour de force, and Cater to You and Linda Hollis-Saposh and Alan Sheffin deserve just like tremendous, and get my tremendous thanks every day for the hot meal that I get at school. Unfortunately, this could happen again. We do not have a great backup plan. It's just safety is too important to us on many levels with food safety, especially right now. So the backup plan is, for better and for worse, that you will either bring or send lunch for 2 weeks. From my perspective, may that be the worst of it. But we hope it won't happen again.
Okay, great. I think this last one is maybe more of another plea than a question. And I'm looking at Judy and Sharon and Lori Scott, which is how can we lighten the backpack loads of our kids? We talked about this a bunch of months ago, but maybe we'll have a working session over the holidays to think about how to take some of the load off. Okay, I think, team, we have exhausted the crux of the questions. I would just end, Ariella, where you started, with my enormous thanks to all 700 of you, and most importantly to the group at the top of the Zoom screen here. You guys are amazing. I hope everybody has a safe and happy and mostly safe Hanukkah, and we'll see you early next year.
Thanks, everyone. Come to Corona Menorah. Say it 10 times fast.